Garmadon, one of the Spinjitzu brothers and the Lord of Darkness. He is one of the most essential and quintessential characters within all of Ninjago, serving an important and pivotal aspect of its history. But whilst the events of what Garmadon has been up to during the timeline of the show is fairly known, what has happened before the events of the pilot, aside from a few flashback scenes, are fairly unknown. And considering that it's Garmadon of all people, you would think that it would be a lot more easy to access in comparison to other things. So I thought for today, in a continuation of my Ninjago character history series, I will do Garmadon, explore his early life up until the event of the pilots themselves, talk about everything that he got up to and what actions actually happened for him to get to the point of the pilots. So let me not waste any more of your time and let's get through the extended early history of Garmadon. A long time ago, not before time had a name however, Garmadon was born to the first Spinjitzu master alongside his younger brother Wu. Garmadon and Wu were both born with the powers of creation and destruction, but his dominant ability was destruction after his father's Oni heritage. At some point after their initial birth, the brothers were told by the first Spinjitzu master himself that one day they would become the bearers and the teachers of the legacy of himself, or more specifically the legacy of Spinjitzu, the martial art that he had created. Wu and Garmadon often trained in their ninja and Spinjitzu abilities while their father watched over them whilst drinking tea and admonishing them if they had ever did something wrong. The brothers also often listened to stories about Ninjago's creation and wanted to be like the first Spinjitzu master. Despite their connection however, they often fought, although their father told them that brothers should not fight each other. Painfully ironic. Wu and Garmadon soon learned about the Jin from his father, who described them as a powerful enemy. Eventually, Garmadon had lessons with his father how to speak their language. Garmadon trained every single day for his first Spinjitzu tornado. Before dawn, he would stretch his arms, his legs, his neck, shoulders, back, eyes and ears because his father told him it would help relax his mind. He always tried to cross this obstacle course that his father had prepared for him, but every time they failed it, he would just sit there, drink tea and say simply, failed. Garmadon often practiced his Spinjitzu movements with the first Spinjitzu master himself. He always instructed Garmadon that Spinjitzu movements included rotation and spin, and told Garmadon to look in everyday life for examples of that. He looked at the fact that rotation is used when mixing tea, and rotation is used when trying to speak to people, or when you use clay to make pottery. Garmadon took those lessons in an attempt to truly learn how to master it. One day Garmadon was out in the city of Ouroboros with his brother Wu. They were out there to buy tea at the request of the first Spinjitzu master. After they had bought said tea, they wanted to return home, but they were actually attacked by bullies who wanted to steal the tea. Without thinking, both Wu and Garmadon applied what they had learned and performed their very first Spinjitzu tornadoes, but they were very powerful and very strong, to the point where they scattered the bullies halfway across the city. It is also presumed around this time Garmadon and Wu were often playing a specific game that they have mentioned in the future, being Temple Gate Tiger, in which Garmadon would throw a ball and Wu would hit it. They never lost. Sometime after this, Garmadon was out in a lake with his brother Wu, and Wu told him about his intentions to venture into Serpentine territory. Garmadon tried to dissuade his brother, but the latter persuaded him and they had trespassed into the territory, but actually it resulted in their own imprisonment. Garmadon blamed his brother for this imprisonment, but after that point a Serpentine by the name of Afsira actually approached them and told them of how she was training to be a sorceress, and offered to free the brothers in exchange for them helping her in the way of Spinjitzu. They agreed. Asphira freed them and told them to keep their promise in due time. But once they returned home, Garmadon and his brother found the first Spinjitzu master creating something by the name of the Scroll of Forbidden Spinjitzu. He asked them where they had been for so long, and Garmadon actually lied to the first Spinjitzu master about Wu catching a fish instead, but it broke the line and they spent the rest of the day trying to recatch it. He told them to not tamper with the scrolls and to go to bed. Garmadon didn't have any intention on upholding the promise to Asphira, but grew suspicious that Wu was actually going to do it, and he eventually caught him actually teaching her. Garmadon warned him of how she can't be trusted, but Wu just simply did not believe him. The following night, Garmadon was reading a book when his brother came in and begged for his help, as he had revealed what Asphira had actually done, and Garmadon agreed to actually aid him. They armed themselves with the scrolls of forbidden spinjitzu to have an edge against her and confronted her. As Wu fought Asphira and achieved victory, Garmadon similarly defeated her minions. Thanks to them, Asphira was subsequently imprisoned after Mambo took back power. The brothers left Serpentine territory and left Asphira to be imprisoned in the pyramid, but after they left, Garmadon began to become the reckless one, while Wu decided to become more responsible following this. They returned home. Their father was very angry that they had actually used the scrolls. He took them from them and hid them in an unknown place. It was sometime after this where the Spinjitzu brothers went on a fishing trip with their father. They went out and both of them were experiencing anger while they're not actually catching any fish. Their father tells them to have faith. With this inspiration, Wu was actually able to catch one, but Garmadon didn't and threw his fishing rod in anger into the lake. A very interesting indication on what could actually be happening next. Because sometime after, this was where one of the most important events began. At some point, the family began to live in the monastery of Spinjitzu. One day the two brothers were sparring and Wu's katana accidentally knocked over the wall of the monastery. Despite his father's warnings to stay within the safety of the monastery, Garmadon went to retrieve it as Wu was too scared, and found the katana, but before he could pick it up, he was bitten by a strange green snake and actually passed out. Garmadon was ill for a fair amount of time, tended by his father and his brother, but unbeknownst to anyone at the time, he had been bitten by the Great Devourer, a pawn of the Overlord himself, sent out to infect him into being a pure evil to begin his own journey. As a result, Garmadon momentarily became violent and selfish, blaming Wu for the change and telling his father that he hated him. The initial effect was not permanent and his normal personality returned, but it was the harbinger of things to come. With no existing cure, Garmadon was doomed to someday lose himself to the Venom's wicked influence, as the Overlord intended to use Garmadon to escape the Dark Island and return to Ninjago. At the same time, Wu blamed himself for his brother's fall to darkness in the years that would follow. Shortly after this, the first Spinjitzu master actually informed the Spinjitzu brothers about the prophecy of the Green Ninja, but Garmadon just simply wasn't interested in this. Again, sometime after that, Wu was training in the monastery, and he had discovered what damaging effects Spinjitzu could have if not used properly. He tried to do a movement called the Kick of Mantis. He turned his pelvis more than he had done before and kicked Garmadon so that he flew over the support beam, and it almost caused the entire roof to fall upon them. Garmadon then attacked Wu with such anger that Wu had never seen before. In his anger, he did not use Spinjitzu properly and almost destroyed the entire monastery. However, his father managed to stop him. The first Spinjitzu then understood that Garmadon needed some sort of special training to help him get back on the right path. It was at this point in time where the first Spinjitzu master set out with a task for the brothers. They, at this point, barely ever actually spoke to their father, as he was still upset over the scrolls being used without his permission, but they said that they could redeem themselves if they went out and found a special tea that could purify Garmadon and actually rid of any sort of venom. After a long journey, they attempted their best to try and find the answer, but it simply did not come to be, and Garmadon remained poisoned. It was at this point in time where the first Spinjitzu master had unfortunately departed, but before doing so, he made the Spinjitzu brothers vow that they would protect the golden weapons at all cost. They agreed to this, so Wu and Garmadon had become allies and a team against evil, even at one point going to the underworld to fight against Samukai and defeating him, and also traveling to Metalonia to take on the original master of Amber, where they sealed the urn away that she was trying to conquer within a tomb. But tempted by all of the evil that was grown inside him, eventually he sought out a more controversial teaching and ended up training under Master Chen. Garmadon travelled to the island and trained there, and became acquainted with the island's jungle environment, including a river, waterfall, and temple garden. It was at this monastery where he was granted lordship and became Chen's right hand by emerging as the victor in a battle against Klaus. besides cheating. This is where he gained the title of Lord Garmadon. Under Chen's advice, Garmadon reluctantly agreed to sign a love letter that Wu had written to Masako, a girl that both of the brothers loved. As a result, Masako fell in love with Garmadon. It was around this time where the Serpentine War actually decided to break out. Garmadon expressed appreciation for Chen's mentorship, but he left to join his brother in the fight against the Serpentine. Chen tried to convince Garmadon otherwise, but Garmadon essentially refused, stating he would never return to Chen's tutorage. As a parting gift, Chen gave Garmadon a map and a key in the shape of a medallion, telling Garmadon about the Forbidden Five and their power that they held. He told Garmadon that he must find the Shadow Dojo located within the wilderness if he desired to learn the Five's teaching and fighting skills and win the war. Garmadon was aware of the dangers, but he still left and wanted to meet Wu. Garmadon eventually met up with Wu after a very long time of not seeing each other. Garmadon didn't believe that they could actually win and that the Elemental Alliance simply was not strong enough. Wu tried to convince Garmadon otherwise, but he again refused, stating that he needed to go out and find these arts that Chen taught him about. Wu told him to have faith in others, but Garmadon simply did not have it. Garmadon travelled across deserts and forests alike, eventually coming across the realm of the wilderness after finding passage between. He stood in front of the Shadow Dojo itself, calling out the Forbidden Five, saying that he sought their knowledge and power. The door opened, but there was nothing there but the Gong of Shattering and the Mallet of Shattering. He thought that Chen manipulated him to get out of Ninjago. Picking up the mallet in a fit of rage, he threw it at the gong. It actually chimed and caused the floor itself to actually open up, where Garmadon fell through. This is where the children of the wolf actually encountered Garmadon, seeing what had happened, knowing that a being by the name of the Lichen King would have heard it as well. So they attempted to find him. The children found Garmadon unconscious amongst wolf warriors, as there were spirits within Garmadon's head showing him the fate of the wolf clan. They tried to awaken him to no avail, but the Lichen King had arrived. The Lichen King actually attempted to attack Garmadon and the children, but Garmadon awoke and the children taught him how to perform Shatter Spin. He managed to do it and actually managed to scare off the Lichen King. Garmadon was wondering who the children were and what the Lichen King was, and it was all explained to him, but Garmadon seemed genuinely reluctant to both the Lichen and also the children. But the children were not having it, as they knew that they were destined to defeat the Lichen King themselves, but they needed to learn the way of their ancestors to do so, abilities that Garmadon did know himself. So they declared Garmadon their teacher, and Garmadon wasn't exactly happy about this, initially just ignoring them and trying to commune with the spirits of the Wolf Mask warriors. A few days after some success, but some not, Garmadon began to practice his abilities over Shatter Spin, unaware that the students were actually watching him from afar. Garmadon caught them and actually tried to get them to go away, as he wanted to know why they were trying to do all of this to him. But they just simply stated that they needed the teacher, and Garmadon decided that as soon as he could teach himself, he would teach them as well. He eventually goes away and tries his best to practice the techniques, and after some time actually comes around to beginning to teach the students, declaring himself as their master. He taught them etiquette, he taught them basic Shatter Spin, he taught them everything that he could, and eventually they did actually defeat the Lichen King. And Garmadon actually became quite prideful of his students and actually admired the qualities that they did have. But eventually and unfortunately, he just had to go back to Ninjago to help with the war that he was initially involved in, giving back all of the mallets and the gong and bestowed it upon his students, where he did eventually go back. Knowing everything that he did, he simply left. This is where Garmadon had returned and helped out with the Serpentine War itself. But during this Serpentine War, he actually encountered a master by the name of Mogra. Garmadon fought against them and they clashed in a great way. There was not really a very easy battle to take place. They did what they could, but eventually they did actually defeat Mogra when Wu also joined the battle. Mogra actually told the brothers in his last moments of life, however, that their greatest battle was not this, and will arrive when the snake in the garden becomes a serpent. Wu asked Garmadon what he was talking about, and Garmadon simply stated that Mogra was a madman. And this is where the war actually ended, as Garmadon had encountered the sacred flutes within Jamonikai village. Outfitting the rest of the masters with these weapons, they did actually defeat the serpents, and Garmadon banished the Anachondri generals that were responsible for all of this to happen, and also then banished Chen and Klaus to their own island for their own individual crimes, and Garmadon swore that he would never interact with them again. But even though the war was over, the battles weren't done yet, as one of the Elemental Masters had ended up betraying the Elemental Alliance, being the Time Twins, so the battle for all time commenced. Garmadon and Wu, with the help of Ray and Maya's blacksmithing abilities, actually created blades that were able to absorb time power. They fought against each other, and eventually they did win, absorbing the abilities and sending them off into a time rift. Little did they know, as soon as that happened, a Vermilion mech actually came down into the same portal that they had created. It was a future version of them with the time blades in hand. So the battle continued, where initially they were going to be defeated, but Garmadon and Wu and the Elemental Masters ended up winning, all thanks to the future Kai, Nia and Wu. So Garmadon in the end talks to Wu about the remaining time blade, and they had decided to put it in the boiling sea. But that is where peace did return to Ninjago itself, and Garmadon and his fresh partner Misako actually ended up marrying and having a son by the name of Lloyd. Garmadon would tell Wu that he feels like Lloyd will have the power to be a better man than he had ever been, even though the Devourer's venom continued to corrupt him. Garmadon remained deeply fond of his family, retaining his feelings for Misako and hoping that Lloyd would not follow his path of evil that he was slowly being drawn towards. Shortly after this birth, Garmadon actually finally succumbed to the evil of the Devourer and would attempt to claim the golden weapons for himself. Just before he could claim victory over his brother, the protection spell actually emblazoned on Wu's kimono, summoning a lightning bolt, and actually struck and transformed Garmadon into how we know him today. Disfigured, he actually fell into the underworld and was confronted by Samukai, where they battled on to be king of the underworld itself. Garmadon won, being truly evil, truly lost, and now with an army. It was there where Garmadon began to construct his revenge, get the golden weapons, and make Ninjago into his own name. One of these being having Samukai resurrect the imprisoned Dr. Julian, an old inventor, in order for him to build vehicles for the Skulking Army. While this was initially Samukai's idea, Garmadon actually ended up taking credit for it. But all we know is that he was beginning a plan that we all ended up knowing. And that brings us to the event of the pilot itself, and that is where I'm going to end the history, because from here onwards, you know it yourself. And I would love to know, did you know about this extended Garmadon history? Was there any events here that you weren't aware of? And is there anything more that you think he should be known when it does come to his own timeline? As it stands, we know a lot about him, and it's fascinating to see the journeys he's been on, but of course I would always love to see more. But that is the early life of Garmadon. I would love to know what you think and who you would want to see next. But thank you very much for watching the video, and I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider subscribing. I love discussing Ninjago with more people, and if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could always become a channel member and join the legends that you see on screen. Each of your support means the absolute world to me, and I truly cannot thank you enough. But like I said, that's about it for today, and take care. Okay, bye!